Alrighty, well, it is 9:30, at least here in Seattle. So I will welcome you all officially to our February 2020 community call. Thank you all for joining on this lovely February day. We have an awesome agenda. I've also posted our RFC issue for this community call in the chat. So feel free to click into that issue and add any questions or comments you might have along the way. In particular, too, if there's a community member out there that's itching to do a demo, feel free to post in there or in the chat as well. And if we have time at the end, we'd love to have you present. I will also mention, some of you may or may not know that Monday is a holiday here in the US. And so some folks in the area have school closures this week or at the end of this week. So Steve is out skiing with his family in Whistler. Very jealous of that situation. But a few other members of the team are out as well. But a good chunk of us are here and excited to have today's community call. So our first agenda item today is talking about new working group members, and we have Michael to deliver that announcement.
Hey, everybody. I'm going to put a link in the chat so that if you're interested, you can look at the same file that I'm looking at right now. And this is just in GitHub in the PowerShell repo under, I think the path is under docs. Is that correct? Yeah. There's a file, and you can actually see that Steve checked in 9 days ago, the additions to the workgroup members. So we have several people to welcome that are going to be helping out. I'm not going to go through every single workgroup because many of these people joined multiple workgroups, and we'll start contributing to sort of like the direction and adding commentary about issues and pull requests and helping us to understand the impact of these things. But I see Gail Colas was added, James O'Neill, Ryan Yates, Michael Lombardi, and then I'm probably going to mess up the pronunciation of this last name, but Patrick Minecki or Minek. I can't, if Patrick's on the call, feel free to correct me. And then Dr. DNS Thomas Lee is joining us as well. And so if you look through this file, you'll see being added to benchmark working group, people being added to the DSC working group, commandlet working group, design working, or commandlet design working group, and a few others. So there's also, you see Thomas Lee and James O'Neill being added as PowerShell committee interim members. And so it's really good to have the overall committee level people from outside of Microsoft giving valuable contribution and helping to shape the direction so that we're getting a fair amount of influence from both people at Microsoft and outside of Microsoft. So that's pretty much it, Sydney.
Awesome. Thanks, Michael. Yeah, so exciting to see more community members joining the working groups. And as always, we're just so appreciative of our PowerShell community and all the amazing contributions you make. We wouldn't have PowerShell if it wasn't for you. Next up, we have our docs update from Sean.
Hello, folks. Let me share my screen. As always, I want to just call out that we maintain this updates about what's new in docs. URLs in the chat for all of this. And one new article of note to call out for PowerShell 7.3 pre-release. We've added some new functionality that improves your ability to use generic methods in generic classes. And so there's a new about topic for this, about calling generic methods. So take a look. And as always, we appreciate all the contributions. Come take a look. We have out here in the community section a contributors guide if you're interested. So start here. And that's all I have to share today. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Sean. Always appreciate the docs updates. So important to us. Aditya, you're up next, talking about the move to .NET 7.
Hello, everybody. I would like to make a quick announcement. We are planning to do a preview release for PowerShell 7.3, that is preview 2, today. The major change in this release is this will be based on a .NET 7 preview 1, which is also expected to be released today. And there are a few known issues. We'll be noting them, so please have a look at those. Those issues are about not able to register a new package source. And the other one is we have switched off ready to run because we're hitting some issues. I'll be having more details in the rel note, so you can follow up those issues. Both of them are fixed as of now, so they will be re-enabled for the next preview. So that's all. That's the update I had.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the update. We are just flying through the agenda today. So just a reminder, feel free to post any questions in the chat or on our GitHub issue. But thanks for that update, Aditya. Next up, we have a very exciting demo from Dongbo showing the completion-based predictor.
Hi, everyone. I just want to have a quick demo to show a predictor we have. Oh, let me share my screen. Sorry. So we're having a new predictor based on PowerShell tab completion. Let me quickly show it. So first loading this, it's a PowerShell predictor DIL, and then we're gonna set the prediction source to be plugin. And then we will see like, okay, I will switch to list view. You can see that it's able to start, predict, give the prediction result based on the tab completion on the parameter names for dir or get command, BCN, or like start process, and like for example, type completion, see system like system management, auto language, parser, and method based on a type name. And the best thing is that it's like it can do like for example variable and let's see in context. I should be able to do session state. I should be able to do like command, and then like calling a method on it. It basically like it's doing a tab completion in the back in the backend, and it just provides that information back to you as a prediction results to give you this intelligence in the terminal. And let's see variables, for example, PS3 line. I'll get it all, and then I will see. Yeah, I can see all the members. I can even like let's see for each maybe. It can tab complete on the member names for you, and like changing the path, changing the current working directory. For example, right now I'm under the root of the C directory, C drive. So if I do like dir and start type U, it's able to find that okay, you have a user folder there, and now let me change to a different location. And now it's able to sense that, okay, you are changing directory, changing the current working directory. So it's, okay, let's do another one, say string, and I'm calling a method on it, say I call concatenate maybe, contains. Yeah, it's able to tab complete on the method name. So what happened behind the scenes is that when we're designing this prediction in PowerShell, we deliberately decide that any predictor should not be able to access the same default RAM space of the PowerShell, because it's possible to have multiple predictors running at the same time. So what happens is that PS3 line gonna send a query to all the registered predictors at the same time and try to collect all the result and render it on the terminal. So if we allow the predictor to be able to access the state of the default run space, that will what's going to happen is that it's possible multiple multiple predictors are trying to do something with the run space, with the default run space at the same time, and that will just won't work because PowerShell is single-threaded. So what happens for this predictor is that we have a separate run space just for the prediction, but we basically sync the state between the default run space and the separate run space, and the separate run space that is used by the predictor. We sync 3 kind of states. One is variable, one is current working directory, and one is module being loaded. And we do the syncing based on this a special event. Like it's existing in all the old version of the PowerShell. We use the, what is that? Syncing variable. Give me 1 sec to find it. Here, yeah, this one. So we use this event. This oh, how can I make it larger? Okay, here it is. So there's an event in the run space called availability changed. So whenever a run space runs something, and after finish running it, it's like when run space is running something, the availability is become busy, and when the execution is done, the availability will become available again. So we basically are using this event. So whenever this run space, like default run space of the PowerShell console, it becomes available, we will try to do something to sync the state, like the current path, the variables, and the modules. It works reasonably well, and as you can see, yeah. So that basically solved the problem that, okay, to be able to be more, aware of the context, I should be able to know the state of the default run space when I do the completion. It basically satisfies this requirement. Yeah, that's it. And so we're probably gonna open source this predictor, and hopefully we're gonna have more predictors, can be implemented in the same module. Yeah, that's it. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dongbo. It was such a cool demo and everything. I saw so many reactions popping up while you were going, of people sending hearts and thumbs up. I think the only question I saw 2 questions come up in the chat. The first was, where can we get this? And it sounds like you have plans to open source it. And so that will sort of be the path forward. And I'm sure if folks keep an eye out, both on Twitter and on the community calls, we'll definitely announce that once that happens. Maybe even a blog post. We'll see. No promises. And then the other question is, will the new predictor, is the new predictor PowerShell only, or will it support Windows PowerShell?
It will be the PowerShell only, because it depends on the new APIs, new interface introduced in PowerShell 7.2. Windows PowerShell won't have this, the prediction APIs to be able to interact with the PS Reline. So it's only in like PowerShell only. Okay,
awesome. Another reason to update to PowerShell 7.2 potentially in the future. Alrighty. Thanks everyone for the questions and the feedback there. We'll move on to our next agenda item, which is an update on the VS Code extension coming from Andy.
Hi there. So this will be a pretty short update. I believe that since the last community call, we've pushed out 2 or 3 preview releases. We're getting really close. We've internally triaged what issues we decided would block us moving the current preview to the stable channel. We feel we're within striking distance. Like we're actually thinking a few weeks at this point. So please test the latest preview out. It went out yesterday. There's a lot of fixes around prompt handling. So if you tested it last time and went, oh, wait, I can't even see my prompt because I ran a command and the prompt is nowhere to be found, that bug is fixed, along with a number of issues around the debugger, including being able to run it with arbitrary arguments and using the specify script command thing where you can prompt for arguments. Those bugs have been fixed as well. We really feel it's getting much, much closer, a good stable experience. So yeah, please give the preview a whirl. If you haven't effort before, now's a great time to do it because it will be the new extension in a few weeks. So if you think you'll get blocked by something, try it out beforehand and let me know. And if you've been testing the preview all along, thank you so much. We really appreciate all the bugs that come in. Even though it's more work, I love fixing them, so that's great. I'll post a link to the release notes in the chat here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andy. And yeah, just to reiterate with what Andy said, we really appreciate all the issues that come in, especially around this preview release. A huge amount of investment has gone into this preview release to really ensure that we have this stable experience that we've been getting feedback on for so long. I also want to shout out Andy, who's put an enormous amount of work into this release. And then also quick shout out to some of the community maintainers, both Patrick and Justin, who have been delivering so much support in the repo, helping us triage your issues and get this preview into a nice stable state. So good stuff all around, and keep giving us the feedback when things don't work. We always appreciate it. All righty, well, that is the end of our agenda currently. And so we'll move on to questions. I know we're only 15 minutes in, so we might end up having a shorter call today, but feel free to add in your questions. I will kick things off with the questions that are in the GitHub repo that were pre-populated in the RFC issue. So the first question is, will minimal PowerShell eventually use .NET Nano framework, or could there be a version of minimal PowerShell to interact with IoT devices based on the .NET Nano framework? Does anyone on the team want to take this one? If not, I can give a response. I'll pause for a second in case anybody wants to jump in.
I can jump in.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I guess we haven't looked specifically at using .NET Nano framework, but it's still very early design, so we can't really commit to anything right now, but that is interesting, and we'll look into that.
Awesome. Yeah, that was going to be my same response. I don't think we have any committed work around this, but that's not to say that that's not what would happen or would never happen. And I know we've invested in the past on making sure that PowerShell can work with IoT devices, and so definitely a scenario we're interested in going forward too. Alrighty, the next question/comment says, in past discussions, you mentioned that in order to include PowerShell core in Windows, you need to find a solution to the lifecycle difference. That lifecycle difference meaning that Windows has a 5+5 support lifecycle, whereas .NET has a 3+3. And so since PowerShell takes a dependency on .NET, it makes it difficult or maybe impossible for us to ship in Windows right now. I just unrelatedly read the What's New in Windows Server 2022 and noticed that under Microsoft Edge browser, it mentions that Edge is essentially excluded from the Windows lifecycle. And someone else makes another comment around how this could be a standalone experience. Thank you for bringing this up. Definitely something we can investigate. I think right now what we've really focused on in our efforts around bringing PowerShell 7 into Windows is around making it as easy and seamless to install. I see that Jason has his hand raised. Jason, did you want to take this one?
Oh, and actually, Sydney, you were nailing it out of the park. I just wanted to first of all thank whoever put that question. It's a great question and a great catch that you noticed that Edge is outside of the usual lifecycle line. I would just add that there are it's more than just one reason that is a challenge to get into Windows. The lifecycle is one of them. Another one is size, for instance. So you hear us talk a lot about native PowerShell, about trying to get, minimal PowerShell, trying to make PowerShell smaller. So while we are fully aware that Edge is not in it, and yeah, we've been looking at that same route as well as being able to utilize a different lifecycle, there are some other criteria. Now, we don't have anything to announce today, but we are moving down the road of trying to bring trying to bring PowerShell into Windows. And we have some options that we're working on currently that we're just not quite ready to talk about until everybody agrees that these are the options we want to move forward on. But thank you for those questions, and go ahead and keep them coming, because yes, you are correct. But also keep in mind, we have a couple of additional criteria that we're working with, and we are continually working on it. It is, believe me, just as much as you want it, we want it too in Windows.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jason. That answered the question very well, I think. The next question I am seeing on the GitHub issue is at one point, Snover mentioned how DSLs were going to get some improvements. Maybe I misinterpreted, and he was talking about past improvements that had been done. Either way, anything planned. So for this issue, I'm assuming we're talking about domain-specific languages. And I know that there has been a lot of exploration around this, and it's a very interesting idea. I think one of the biggest exploration points we were working on in the last year or two was around the PS-ARM experiment. So that was a PowerShell domain-specific language for ARM. And so that was a pretty big experiment that we did. And part of that was also to learn more about the potential of how we could improve DSLs in PowerShell. Ultimately, that project got canceled. I don't know if that's the right word.
I can jump in real quick, Sydney.
Yeah, go for it.
So PS-ARM was our kind of first exploration into PowerShell DSLs. I say the experience with DSLs from PS-ARM was definitely fruitful. The PS-ARM project was, I'd say, is no longer invested in because there was a significant overlap with Bicep, and we really saw the community was using Bicep more than PS-ARM, and so that was kind of a mutual decision between, I'd say, us and the Bicep team to look at how do we really encourage PowerShell use and PowerShell users to go and leverage Bicep. But from the DSL point of view, there are certainly good learnings. I can't speak to potential DSLs that we're going to be doing in the future or now, but that was definitely a fruitful experience for the team.
Awesome. Yes, thank you, Danny. You had just the right words. I think I would also be interested if there are like asks for more like specifics around what you would be looking for with improvements to DSLs, if there are particular scenarios you're trying to accomplish. Always super useful for us in kind of deciding where we want to explore next. So love the question and would love follow up on that. Alrighty. I am looking, I'm not seeing any more questions right now on the GitHub issue. I'm looking in the chat and I see some comments around using Windows PowerShell with Azure Automation. And I do see that somebody commented this already. But in the past few months, Azure Automation did include PowerShell 7 support. So that's pretty exciting advancement there. So just another option to know about. Alrighty, I will pause for a second and let anyone repost any questions I may have missed, or if there are any new questions that have come up. I see a hand raised. Are you able to come off mute and ask your question, or do I need to do something? Looks like you.
No, I'll ask. Can you hear me?
Okay.
So I wanted to I've heard Jeffrey Snover and other people talking about that there shouldn't be like a separate Microsoft Learn course for PowerShell, but I was wondering if the PowerShell team is looking into or working with the Microsoft Learn team to specifically include PowerShell things in the courses. For example, I pasted 2 links here. So one is the Microsoft exam demo. If you click on that link, it's a simulation of how a Microsoft exam goes. Now, specifically for the AZ204 exam, which is the developer exam, there is an additional page that comes in when you take that exam, which gives you an option to select your preferred language for development. And currently there are 2 options. One is C# and one is Visual Basic. So I was wondering if the PowerShell team thinks that PowerShell should be in that list for Azure developer exams, and I couldn't find like a work group that is working with Microsoft Learn to do that. So I was wondering, what is the position of the PowerShell team regarding that?
So I can answer some of this. For the Learn content, there is PowerShell-centric Learn content out there today for Azure PowerShell, and there's more being developed. And from the PowerShell docs team side, we're looking at developing some Learn content for PowerShell that's more as PowerShell as a programming language. I don't know that anyone's working directly with the certification folks about PowerShell in as a language in the certification exams. But Jason, do you have more information about any of that?
Yeah, and Sydney, I mean, since we have the time, if you don't mind, this might be helpful. So to answer your question, we've been working with folks from Microsoft Learn on getting out some learning content. However, I wouldn't call that certification ready style content. Let me give you just a brief history on certification in PowerShell. Certification for PowerShell, it's been mainly regarded as something needed for IT-based certifications, so things like the previous MCSE and things like that. And the theory behind it is that PowerShell is a tool, just like Active Directory users in computers. There is no certification on ADUC. And as a tool, it is expected that you know how to use it. So if you go take an Exchange exam, they have PowerShell questions. If you take a SQL exam, they have PowerShell questions. If you take a Windows exam, they have PowerShell questions, but there isn't necessarily a PowerShell course per se for it. Now, when it gets to the developer side, that same situation continues. As far as people adding PowerShell to their own certifications in Microsoft Learning, that's something that we're always working on, but that's also kind of determined by the teams that set up that certification. Maybe they didn't feel that PowerShell was something that they were focused on or something like that. So while we can try to work with Microsoft Learn and get those things added, that's something that takes quite a bit of time to do.
Right, I understand. And I was talking about from a tools perspective too. I was not talking about PowerShell certification separately. So this is an Azure developer certification. Currently, the tools that are included are C# and Visual Basic. And the question is if the PowerShell team wants PowerShell to be included there in the list of tools. So that choice that you get to choose whether you want to take the exam in C# or Visual Basic is not captured in that demo link, but it is a page that comes up when you take the 204 exam. And when I took it, I was like, oh, I wish there was PowerShell there. And that would be a tool just like C# or Visual Basic. And that would be great.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and we will definitely, as we continue to do, we will definitely look into that. To answer your question directly, of course, we'd love to see it on that list, but only if it is, useful in that technology. There are, some programming things where PowerShell is maybe limited to achieve those goals, so we wouldn't want it, in those kind of places. But if possible, certainly, and I'll definitely take a look into it directly and see what we can find out.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for the question. I will pause once more and see if anybody else has a question.
I just want to give Dongbo a big shout out and kudos for that great demo. And thank you, Dongbo, for all the work that you're doing on that predictor. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you.
Alrighty, well, happy to give folks a full 30 minutes back. Question is, where can we follow to see when the predictor is released? Dongbo, do you have an answer to that?
I don't, but I think we can. I'm not sure. I really need to talk to Jason to discuss about the plan to make it public.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Totally
here,
fair.
I'll throw this out. While we don't have the exact plans of when or where we're going to make it public, this is such a big deal, at least to me, that you can guarantee that we'll put out a blog post on it and we'll be tweeting about it. So check the PowerShell team blog site and you'll notice the blog when it comes up. And we'll let you know through this community call and through Twitter as we get close to that kind of idea. We expect that a lot of people would be interested in this.
Yeah, since we still have some time, I want to just borrow a few minutes talking about it more. So the plan we have right now, well, it's not a plan we have as a team, just a plan for myself, is that we're going to have a simple repo for PowerShell predictors, but it might include multiple predictors. Like, for example, one of which going to be this completion-based predictor, and some others might be, for example, .NET CLI predictor, Git CLI predictor, or something like that. And I have tried to utilize the existing Posh Git or some other like Posh.NET, which are the PowerShell modules do the tab completion for .NET CLI and Git CLI. But the problem we have is that the way it works today is that it's gonna call into the .NET or Git almost for every tab completion. And it's fine for tab completion because for tab completion, usually the threshold for the response time is like 500 milliseconds. So if you return results within 500 milliseconds, it's gonna be okay for the users. It's not noticeable. But for the prediction, it's actually queried every time you press a keystroke on the keyboard. So it requires much shorter intervals for the result to get back. So we cannot call this CLI, every time we try to get a result back. So that's the kind of the difficulty we have right now to including those tab completion modules for those CLI tools into this completion-based predictor. But it's still doable in a different way. One is that maybe we can, automate, for example, for the .NET CLI, it has a .NET complete command to do the tab completion for itself. It's possible that we can generate a data structure based on the results from the .NET complete on different variants of inputs. And that can be done in automation possibly. And once we have the data structure, we can, in the predictor for the .NET CLI, we can just use that data structure and return results. They're going to be blazing fast. So it's something open that can be explored in future. So it's possible that once we have this open sourced, folks from the community can contribute to other predictors using this kind of approach. So we can have more and more coverage in our prediction. That'll be awesome. Thanks.
And hey, Sydney, if you don't mind, I want to respond to my friend Max. Max, look, I want it today too. And we are going to get it out as quickly as we can and get it available to you. We still have some more engineering to do on it. I'm glad that Dongbo got it to a point where he could show you a demo today, but we will get it out to you. And trust me, as soon as we can, we'll make a test available to you.
I got it. I'm teasing you too.
Awesome. And I see a question from Joel on here too, asking, does that predictor depend on features in the current preview PowerShell release or a future release?
It depends on the feature in PowerShell 7.2. It's already released. And it also depends on PS3 line 2.2. So currently it's in RC, and we're gonna have a GA for 2.2 PS3 line very soon.
Awesome. Okay, I see a question here from Seth. Can you talk about whether Microsoft executive team interest in PowerShell is growing, subsiding, or the same? For example, how could WinGet be proposed and released without PowerShell being a primary design consideration? How could that ever happen? Is upper management not driving PowerShell adoption across the company? If so, then why? It seems like there's a lack of driver at the top levels, but I could be wrong. It's just a vague feeling that's been growing over the last 5 years. Michael, are you still on the call if you want to take this one?
I am still on the call. Sorry, I'm just reviewing the question to make sure I understand the full context.
No, you're good.
When get be proposed and released without PowerShell being a primary design consideration. Yeah, that's a trick. That seems like like the temptation would be some sort of political answer. So I'm trying to avoid something like that. Yeah, it definitely is a priority. I think the whole team would say we're seeing more and more, like an increase of partnerships around the company. I think package management is an interesting one where that's a challenging scenario. As you have seen over and over again, people have tried to figure out package management in Windows. But yeah, I think just to address the question at like a high level, are we seeing an increase in supports from other teams at Microsoft? Are we seeing it plateau? Are we seeing it trailing off? It's kind of the way I'm interpreting that question. If I look beyond the scope of just WinGet, and it feels like there's an increase. And I think part of that is we, and especially in the past like 3 to 6 months, have been aggressively reaching out to teams and trying to figure out how we can assert ourselves and be part of other teams' projects. So I think that's a two-way street. That we don't want to just wait for other teams to take dependencies on us. We want to be reaching out to other teams and growing PowerShell proactively.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I guess like one other thing I would maybe add, just in terms of like one way to look at interest in PowerShell and how it's maybe changing over time, is that we've continued to get new members onto the PowerShell team and kind of continuing to grow that engineering effort. So at least from my perspective, it seems like interest in Microsoft or interest in PowerShell at Microsoft seems as strong as ever.
Just to put it out there, because I would love for people to start thinking about this and giving us feedback. We're looking at this under two lenses. One is how do you grow contribution of PowerShell modules, right? So across different teams at Microsoft and other companies, how do you make it attractive for them to produce PowerShell modules so that people working in operations get the best experience possible? The other thing we're really looking at is how do you make the interactive PowerShell experience something that is evolving all the time, or commands that are not written in PowerShell? And that is something where we could really use a lot of feedback. So like an example would be, yeah, I actually see some good examples. Yeah, like .NET.exe, when you get it, yeah, I see. And I was even thinking things like, cube control and other commands that are produced by other open source communities. Like what can we do to make the experience of running those tools really shine in PowerShell, so that PowerShell, you kind of have this like, what does it look like to create new modules and new commandlets and make that first class? But then also, what if somebody out there decides that it's not of interest to them to have their command be in PowerShell? Okay, fair enough. How do we make the experience of running that command better when someone chooses to run it in a PowerShell session than in any other terminal experience? And so that's just an area of investigation for us right now. We've got lots of ideas, but anybody who has feedback or just wants to spend some time thinking about it and send us feedback would be awesome.
Awesome, thank you. I see 2 hands up right now. I think the first one I saw go up was Maximo.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey.
Hey, yeah, well, this is the thing. I would expect that maybe as soon as PowerShell 7 or 8 or whatever it is are part of the server core, organization will really go for the adoption immediately, because right now it's not. So we it's part of our ability is to evangelize about, look, let's use this. Right now, like in my current work, I use Windows 5.1, but at the same time, when I develop for scripts, I also test them in 5.7. I mean, in PowerShell 7, because I want to make sure that that script lives through the different versions. So, and that interests people, open eyes to people, right? So that initiate the adoption sequence. Now, of course, many organizations have their systems, their images set to, this is the core system, this goes out immediately. Now, for anything that affects a change to the system, there's a lot of paperwork, there's a lot of rules and policies in place. So, you know what? So as long as that gets integrated into Windows Server as soon as possible, the adoption will increase drastically. With all the winget and all the additional pieces that you guys have developed, it's been great. But it's get out of the door faster. Part of the system, people accept that, adoption increases. That's my take.
Hey, Max, you know what? I agree with you in that with PowerShell in Windows, that would help keep PowerShell on everyone's mind. But I think something else, and this is my own perspective, whether the development team is at Microsoft or more importantly, outside of Microsoft. Remember what their challenge is to develop a feature and create a way to use that feature. Developing a command line tool is very quick and very easy for a lot of development teams to do and then move forward. Developing PowerShell commandlets takes a lot of time and thought. As an example, take cube control and try to wrap that bad boy. You're going to end up creating basically the same extent that the Exchange team originally created for a commandlet spread. So development teams don't usually have an extra year or two to throw on to the end to write PowerShell commandlets. So what I'm saying is that yes, I think the adoption would help people think of PowerShell commandlets sooner. I think it's also wise to look at the industry and say, don't expect everybody to make PowerShell commandlets, but how can PowerShell help us deal with that better? And I think you're seeing us think that way. You see some of that in our work in things like Crescendo and some of the work that we're putting into argument completers and arguments in the pipeline, so that we can try to address some of those ongoing needs, because I don't honestly believe that that's a problem, and I don't think it's going to go away.
I gotcha. Thank you.
Awesome. Oh, sorry. No, thanks for the rich conversation, and I appreciate the response too, Jason. It looks like Patrick, you maybe have your hand raised.
Hey, Patrick, you're muted if you are talking.
Oh, if that's me, I did not mean to have my hand up.
Oh, okay, cool. Alrighty. I'll pause once more if anyone else has anything they'd like to add to the conversation.
I just wanted to add to Justin. So you made a comment about the developer and the administrator distinction. I just wanted to point out that the 204 exam is a developer exam, Justin, and the coding questions that they ask in C# or Visual Basics, in my experience, are all doable in PowerShell, just for the 204 exam specifically. So just wanted to add that.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, and thanks so much for all the, oh, sorry, was someone saying something?
I actually think I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
I just joined a new team, and we've had a discussion over the last month where people are asking what is the correct modules to use against Azure. And I think it was mentioned last month on this call. Will you put out a blog post or something trying to tell people going from the AZ modules, the new MG modules, and what was it? There was 2 or 3 others you could choose from, and people are kind of scared picking one of those because they don't really know which will be the the long-term goal at the moment.
Awesome. Yeah, I think I saw Damien was on the call. Damien, are you still here if you want to take this one?
Yes, I'm here. So I just want to make sure that I got the question. So the question was about the migration to Microsoft Graph.
Yeah, basically, yeah, indirectly, yeah.
So the long-term approach is Graph is going to be the Graph module, the MG Microsoft Graph SDK module is going to be the long-term modular for managing any resources within Graph. Leveraging Graph in AZ7 is allowing to manage those resources, the smaller set of resources that are useful in the context of Azure. So there is an overlap. We know that there is an overlap, and we are putting content out that will clarify this position. Those 2 areas are long-term investment. The Graph team is working on migrating or helping migrating from Azure AD MS Online modules to Microsoft Graph. So that's work that is being done by the identity team. I am not 100% sure of what their timeline looks like, but I know they're actively working on that migration path. But long term, if you want to invest I mean, if you want to look at those identity commands, I would look at AZ or Microsoft Graph, depending on how broad your type of resources is.
Okay, but our understanding that the MG modules and AC modules will be going forward, and they might be changing back into the new Graph, but those are the long-term modules to go for. Is that correct?
That is correct, and they have already migrated to Microsoft Graph.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Welcome.
Cool. Thanks for the question, and thanks for the response, Damien. Appreciate you being on this call. I see another hand raised potentially. Was that Ian?
Yes, that's Ian. Hello. I work actually in the Microsoft Identity and Network Access product group, and I have a particular interest and focus on PowerShell at the moment. So just adding to everything that Damien said, yes, strategically think of the PowerShell SDK for Microsoft Graph as the place to go and interact with Azure AD from a PowerShell point of view. Azure AD, Azure AD Preview.
It would, sorry for barging in. It would be awesome to have a blog post or something official that we can point to, because people continue asking this question because they can't Google it, and they will find stuff from 2015 that states something else.
I know. So Jonas, very much focused on that at the moment. We are looking to have something out potentially in the next couple of months to that end. It's all sort of under consideration how to actually best deliver that at the moment, but very much, yeah, understand that there's a lot of lack of focus. The current statement is pretty much go try the PowerShell SDK, and we want something a lot clearer in terms of our direction in that space. So all I can say at the moment is, yeah, it's, from my point of view, it's very much a goal, and it's one of the sort of immediate priorities in terms of getting some community communications out there. So watch this space, please be patient, and thank you for your patience is what I'd say.
Cool. Okay, there is a bit of stress at the moment due to the graph changing and people not 100% understanding the ramifications of that. So
exactly. So we announced the Azure AD Graph deprecation. Again, all I can say is watch out for a follow-up communication, and yeah, I understand the stress as well. And there's also the fact that a lot of customers haven't realized the tie-in between Azure AD and the Azure AD PowerShell Graph API as well. So listen, it's for me, it's my number one priority in terms of getting some comms out there. But as usual, we have to go through various process. So I hope that helps. I know it's not exactly what you want, but yeah, it's known and it's been worked on.
Awesome. Thanks, Ian, for the response as well. I see a question in the chat. Of the Linux VMs running in Azure, what percentage of them have PowerShell installed or launched PowerShell at least once per month? Seth, yeah, this is a really interesting question, and can't say I have the data to share on that. Something we would love to know, but I will make a plug for our public PowerShell Power BI dashboard, which you can see the Linux starts of PowerShell. So that can give you a sense of how much Linux usage we have in PowerShell. You can find that dashboard at aka.ms/ps-github-bi. And so there you'll find all of the sort of information that we collect as a PowerShell team and can share publicly. All right, reading through the other comments in the chat to see if I'm missing any questions. Looks like there's a lot of conversation that's going on, which is awesome. All right, any other questions that I was missing? Chris, yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I just want to raise my hand because I've been thinking about the last 10 minutes where we discussed about the PowerShell experience, the adoption and problems we face, and it kind of goes as well with the Azure PowerShell and those commandlets. So I think a long-standing thing in PowerShell was that most commandlets, not even the built-in ones, are designed to be idempotent. So what I mean by that is you do new thing, and if the thing already exists, you get back an error. So you end up writing if else. And of course, people will say, well, DSC was designed so you can state what you want the state to look like. But if you, for example, compare ESET-CLI, it's very nice to say, I want to create this. And if it already exists, no problem, you don't error out. And similarly, the ESET PowerShell, and I think the graph ones as well, have this PowerShell intrinsic behavior where I think it's people look at recommendations for whether a commandlet should throw an error or not. So it's kind of up to the commandlet authors, but I just never see that being actioned or there being a philosophy to design commandlets to be idempotent. And this is something that I sometimes see hinder adoption, because ESET-CLI is a prime example where quite often it's better to use the ESET-CLI because you get the idempotency out of the box and don't have to do if-else statements. Is there any ideas around that in terms of the philosophy or how the long-term roadmap would look around that?
I can reply and comment on this one, Sydney.
Yeah, go for it.
So idempotency is definitely a topic that we have in our radar. There are a lot of complexities behind that that I can expose a bit here in a couple of minutes. But basically, one of them is making sure that we follow the philosophy of the service, and then how we match idempotency on the HTTP operations. When you do when you have that, we have to be careful between put and patch operation as an example. And if we move towards idempotency, we need to think carefully of how we update resources. If you just do an update on the command, or if the command is not being, or the resource is not being updated, how do we return the updated properties? Let's say you do that, but the property has been changed. How we handle that? As we think of that, we also want to make sure we have an alignment with other Azure command line tools. Thinking of Azure CLI, but also being more aligned with Terraform as an example. So it's a long discussion that is happening right now. It's a problem we've identified a few months ago, so we've heard it loud and clear. But the change is going to take time. And when we make the change, we also want to make sure that we have that change rolled out across the 130 or so modules that we own right now. I'm not sure exactly the exact number, but we want to make sure we have that across modules instead of having multiple breaking change going on. So that when we have that out, we can say, hey, now we're idempotent, this is the way we behave, and you can update your code. If we try to do that on a gradual change, it's going to be a breaking change every so often, and it's going to be painful. So we have those two things in consideration. When we will land it, I really don't know at this time. It's going to be a few months from now for sure.
Yeah. Does the PowerShell team think it's of course understandable for any commanded author it would be a breaking change, that PowerShell could help with that? What I see quite often is if you do something and you write code, even sometimes you write code, if get something and then error action ignored, as if to check if the thing exists first. Could there be a special error action to say, I expect this commandlet to behave in an idempotent fashion, and I accept to not get an error if it already exists? So this way the user could express the intent, because naturally there's big code bases that already exist that would be hard to migrate if such a big breaking change was made. Do you think PowerShell could help with that, guide people there? Or is it purely up to the commandlet authors?
So we're thinking of different approach to do that, and one that kind of has my favor at this point, but I'm not the only one, would be a gradual rollout. So we would introduce the ability to do idempotency with like an environment variable, for example, or a setting configuration set, and you can say, okay, now I want to get the, by default we would keep the existing behavior. Customers could select that new behavior should they want to as an environment variable, and we switch for idempotency, and then at some point we would switch default but still allow the previous behavior. We need to look in details on how that could look like, but that would be an approach we are considering.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, understand this is a non-trivial problem.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah,
but
thank
yeah,
you.
we have that. And I was going to just say that it is on top of our mind. Yeah, I wish we could say we are rolling it out in next month, but that's not the case.
Cool. Thanks for the question, Chris. And of course, thanks for the response as well, Damien. I noticed some great conversation around this in the chat as well. Joel, I noticed you mentioned kind of referring to an issue you created in PowerShell Get v3 around this, and just want to acknowledge that, saw that, really appreciate it, working on that and hoping to see it, see that change get reflected. Super useful scenario. So once again, thanks again to everyone for helping us cover our blind spots and providing us with this feedback. With that, we are actually coming up on the end of our time. So thank you so much to everyone for joining today. As always, we will see you next month, third Thursday of the month. And yeah, have a great rest of your day or evening or whatever time it is where you're joining from. Yeah, thanks so much for joining.